Sweet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to call number 9 of Lila and Naomi's year of expansion. This is going to be fun because we're talking about egos and expansion. And egos are always fun for me.
Say more
I don't
about
know.
that.
I think you know this already. My ego has her own persona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's little ego, and she's really petty. And I adore her a lot, but I don't let her drive the bus because she's mean.
Oh, see, you're good, and I realize that's a judgment, and smart, another judgment. Because mine tends to be petty, but also a bit condescending and superior.
Oh yeah,
She definitely. That's where my sparkly high horse unicorn comes in. Yeah, ego.
Definitely. Would you like to elaborate for the people who don't know us as well as we know each other?
Sure. On which part? For those of you, if you're just tuning in and you've never heard any of our recordings before, I'm Naomi Calderon. I always like to tell people I'm your favorite coach. I am a neurolinguistic practitioner as well as a certified holistic health coach. And with me is the lovely Empress Lila, an amazing healer. I know she keeps wanting me to use the H word for myself as well, and it's coming. And she has so many gifts and talents in the world of energy healing, and does some practices that are just amazing at getting out your own way. Talk about letting go of the ego. Big help there.
Yeah. Or, just making friends with your ego so that they're not in charge of your life.
Right, like Lila said, so that it's not driving your bus. As far as expanding on that, we had a call a while back. If you missed it, we both recognize that there are times when, we put our judgy pants on, and the comment was, yeah, my high horse is a sparkly unicorn. So it's part of the human condition. We're two-legged. We walk this planet, and it's how we're wired is assessing everything. And assessments aren't necessarily a bad thing. We need them to discern, is this a safe thing for me to do? Is this a wise thing for me to do? We need to assess to discern. But sometimes those assessments turn into judgments, both good and bad. Oh, that color looks good on you. Is a judgment. You're an idiot. That's a judgment. So judgments can fall on both sides of the, quote, good or bad equation. Most of the time we think bad things when we hear, oh, that's a judgment, or she's being judgy, or are you, let go of judgments. We assume that judgment is always bad. Not the case. That is typically where we do the work, though, is where are we being judgmental toward ourselves or someone else in a way that is destructive and not serving. And as we started talking about that, we got on the subject of ego, because they go hand in glove, really. It's the ego that drives our judgments. And so looking at this ego and expansion, where does ego support it, or does it? And where does ego prevent expansion?
So juicy.
Right?
So funny that you should bring this up. So we don't always know in advance what our topics are going to be. Sometimes we go, what do you want to talk about today? And that's how we come up with today's topic. So last night, my enjoyable other and I were having a conversation. And he said, that's just not in alignment with how I see myself. And so maybe I need to reevaluate how I see myself. had a moment of, this is why I keep talking to you. Sometimes I just want to smack them. Not my ego at all. Uh, and I thought that, how often do we do that? I know that personally, I do it frequently because I am always looking to be more, greater, better. A better mom, a better friend, a better healing artist, a better coach, a better cheerleader, a better everything. So I am doing that quite regularly. But for people who aren't super nerdy about healing art, how often are you looking at your self-perception? Or are you just letting your ego be in charge and having moments of like, I'm going to doggedly stick to this way of being, even though when I step back and I look at it, I realize I've changed. That is like super huge for me because I see that with people that are behaving in a certain way that isn't necessarily in alignment with who they think they are.
So rather than talk ambiguously and don't give names, can you paint a picture of what you mean? I think I know what you mean. It's just a little unclear because it's a little broad picture and it's a little ambiguous.
I think that I can, I don't think he'll be mad at me. I can give you details about this conversation. So the thing that we were talking about was his willingness to say, hey, something feels different about our relationship. Are we okay? And I've done that before, where I've been like, hey, things feel different. Are we okay? And at that time, he had the same response that I had this time, where I was like, what? Yeah, we're fine. Something's different? What is it? And his perception of himself, well, his perception, his ego's stance on even asking that question is that it's not very masculine.
Ah.
And then he's like, I'm not someone that says that or does that. And then he goes, but maybe I am. maybe I should look at myself differently because maybe I am someone that says, hey, are we okay? And that's completely okay. And there's nothing not masculine about it. I'm like, yes.
Got it. So it really does, it speaks also to the conversations we've had about redefining and really getting to know who we are at the core. So those of you listening, who you are at the core, me, who I am at the core, Lila, etc. And redefining. Sometimes we have these old stories that paint a picture defining who we are, and we get to reevaluate that. And sometimes the ego will show up and say, but no, I'm a tough guy. I don't ask, kissy questions like that, or whatever it is. Or whatever that is for you.
Yeah. I don't know if we talked about this like in a call, but at the beginning of the year when I was like, oh no, I am definitely not the same person I was last year. Like we talked about the new year, new you, and how everybody does that, and it's all a bunch of baloney, and not the good kind, like the cheap baloney. I didn't know there was good baloney, but apparently there is. But I said, I really am new because my ego died like 1,000 deaths between October and February. And I was just having to redefine what it means to be my daughter's mother because she does not live in my home anymore. What it means to be a partner to this person who shows up very differently in relationship than all of the other relationships that I have been in and witnessed in my entire life. So like super judgy when it comes to our relationship. My ego is always like, oh, this is wrong. We're happy, but this does not match our picture. And I'm always having to tell her, oh, honey, it's okay. We're just being different. So I think that is a really probably powerful thing for the people listening to pay attention to as well. When your ego starts freaking out, is it a valid freak out? Are you really in actual danger? Are you really not safe? Or are you just being different than you have known yourself to be thus far?
Well, and I think that's a perfect point to bring up, because the ego really is there to protect us, or at least that's what it thinks its job is. But sometimes protecting us is actually to our detriment, because we have changed. Yeah. Or there's this, whoop, 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 not safe, not safe, not safe thing happening, when really it's not that we're not safe. It may be something as simple as, I don't want to look bad, or I'm a little uncomfortable, or we've never done it this way before, and I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be, and I don't do good if I can't see, what's at the bottom of the lake. I need to see that the water's clear and be able to see all the way down. I don't like murky. Whatever it is.
You've been having wine with little ego, haven't you? She's told you all of our secrets, hasn't she?
I'm telling you what. Yes. I live in wine country, so of course I've been having wine with little ego. I've been having it with my own, that's for sure. And I know what I find for myself is, if I am in the throes of crazy busy life, I don't pay attention to those things. I react to them and let them drive the bus. It's the taking the time. It's the doing the journaling, working towards living more mindfully, setting up rituals, whatever it is that works for you is what I would encourage people to put in place. So how do you know? How do you know? Is you have to be able to sit with it. Like Lila said, her ego has died 1,000 deaths in the past few months. And that's a great thing. I think very few people who have walked this planet truly have ever moved beyond ego. And there are probably some psychotherapists who would argue that no one ever has.
I can see that.
I was going to say, and that's an interesting view. And as is mine, it's all opinion, so that's just been my experience. But it's about taking that time and sinking into, So using the example you had used earlier, if one of us came up against that, well, gee, is it really not manly to ask, hey, are we okay? Where did that come from? Is that my belief or someone else's that I've simply adopted? Do I really believe that's true? And if I do, great. And if I don't, great. If I don't, then what is it I believe instead? And it's about taking the time to really, and I know we had a few calls back. I'm not going to tell you how many because I'm not positive if it was 3 or 4, where we talked a lot about redefining who you are by really discovering what's true for you in those moments. Now, here's a question. What do you do when someone else's ego shows up?
Oh, gosh. Depends on the ego. I'm going to tell all my business. Because my life is more for the others than it is for me most of the time anyway. So I had a lover one summer before my enjoyable other. And this person was in a relationship. I was not aware of the relationship before the adventure started, but I became aware and I kept adventuring because it was fun for me. Judge if you'd like. But at one point, he said to me, "I love you." And I was like, "You're insane. You don't love me. You love the way you feel when you're with me. But you showing up at my house for booty calls, this is not love. This is your ego needing to be stroked." And he gave me the worst face on the planet. This has nothing to do with my ego. I know how I feel, and nobody cares. So it depends. In that instance, I had no interest. I was completely selfish, and I had no interest in appeasing his ego and giving him the "I love you" too, because I didn't. Not in the way that he loved me anyway, or that he felt like he loved me. And it was what it was. It's like, this is an experience that I'm having, and when I'm done having it, I'll be done. And probably part of that was being a mirror for him. And, I'm sure he ran into a lot of women that fell for the "I love you, I want to take care of you, I want to be with you." Really? Because you don't seem to be taking care of yourself or the person that you actually are committed to. So I'm not buying this at all. So in that instance, it was, oh, look, your ego, how cute. And it might not have been kind or loving, but that's where I was that summer. When it is my enjoyable other, and there are lots of experiences where I realize that he is just being interesting. And I typically don't engage. That's kind of the best explanation that I have for it. Because I know that he will self-reflect, and he will eventually get to a point where he is aware, and then we can have a different conversation. I don't ignore him. I definitely listen to his words, and if there's something that I could do to support him, I will. But for the most part, I'm just like, "Oh, you're being weird. Okay."
Well, you're not getting, like you said, you're not engaging, and not engaging doesn't mean ignoring. It's not the same. To me, it's not the same thing. Ignoring
I wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, la, 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 I'm just not even listening to you, versus not engaging. Judgment moment. Every time I see trigger warning on Facebook, I'm just like, oh my God, that to me just says you got some shit you haven't cleaned up. Different soapbox for a different day, probably. But it's those things that trigger you, right? That hook into you. When somebody's ego shows up and you hook into that, are triggered by it, whatever you want to say, and react to it. So what I hear is you're unwilling to have that engagement happen, that reaction, like it's almost like a chemical reaction that happens in the lab, only it happens in our ego. So you're not engaging.
Nope.
Because you also understand and know and see that that is not the truth of who that person is.
Absolutely.
Right?
And so it's different in different experiences and in different relationships. There was a lot of, talked about the ego death around my daughter moving. There was a lot of ego involved on both of our sides as we came to a place of, oh, you're moving. Okay, love you. Bye. And there's still some ego involved in in that for me. And I'm sure there's still some involved in that for her. But when she was living here and I got the pleasure of daily engagement with her ego, that was a lot more challenging to not engage than with my enjoyable other.
And what do you think made the difference? What do you think is the difference between the two?
All of the stories that I have around mother, the right and wrongs of the label mother. I have a Facebook friend who left her kiddos with dad and grandparents and went to be free. And the judgment, my ego had field days. And as much as I judged, I also, with every judgment, reminded myself that that was her and their journey, and it was not really my business. And so when it came to my daughter, again, this decision is a lot hers. It is my job to keep her safe, I think. That also could be ego, just that judgment that it's my job to keep her safe could be ego. But it's part of the label of mother that I feel is like the most important. So she is safe where she is. Everything else is up to her now. She has gone, my life, my steering wheel, give it back. It's a little early, but here you go, boo. And I had to dismantle all of the what does it mean to be the princess's mom that I had crafted over the last 32 years. Because I decided when I was 5 that I was going to be a mom. And I knew somewhere not long after that I was going to have this adventure with this little girl. The boys were bonus material. And so there was a lot of story for me to rewrite around being her mom.
So it goes back to, again, understanding who we are, what our values are. What are those things we've told ourselves? In your case, what you've told yourself and believed to be true as to what is the definition of mom to the princess. Or in your enjoyable others case, what does it mean to be manly? And that can be anything. I think of one person that I worked with who had a very strong belief that she was stupid and couldn't learn. And to shift that belief, and that's, that can be simply that we've been shown repeatedly how dumb or horrible or whatever the story is, and we've begun believing it, and the ego keeps us there to protect us. Well, if I do study something and I don't pass, that means I failed, so it's easier just to tell myself I'm stupid and not even bother. It can be the ego's way, even when we meet somebody else's ego with ego, because that tends to be my MO. Somebody throws ego out. Depending on...
That's not a Leo way of being at all.
Oh, God, no, not at all. It's going to go one of two ways. There's rarely a not engage, although I am getting better at that, so yay me, is either, depending on who they are and just how blustery they are, or really actually how scary they are. If they're scary, I'll like run away, you know. And but if they're not scary, or I don't perceive them as scary, it's ego meet ego. And
wow.
Yeah, which is frankly not conducive to creating a win-win-win outcome, you know. You know, ain't nobody winning that tug of war, and it's wasted, expended energy, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely am seeing where, when that happens, expansion is not really possible in that moment.
Yep.
You know, expansion is at the very best curtailed, if not completely shut down. It's at least slowed to molasses speed, but more than likely it's just completely shut down. It doesn't allow for that. I like how you put that. I'm not ignoring the person. I'm simply refusing to engage. And I think in that is the beautiful lesson, is if what you, dear listeners, are up to is expansion in any area of your life. Maybe it's life in general, like we're working on. Maybe it's in one specific area. I think that was the biggest piece from today, is to really look at, where am I engaging? And when you notice you're engaging with someone who's coming at something from ego, whether it's directed to you or they're just stuck in their, whatever their story is, if you're engaging, chances are it's ego, chances are there's a judgment, and chances are that's blocking expansion.
I completely agree. So what should I do? Right?
Well, this is where mindfulness comes in, and I'm thinking of a specific person, and I'm not going to give too many details. Let's see, can I paint a picture? This can happen at work. This can happen in relationships at home. This can happen in family dynamics, you know, with grown children, or you as a grown child with a parent. It can happen, the same scenario can happen anywhere. One person thinks that they know best, and the other person is like, no, I'm supposed to be running the show and you need to listen to me. And so there's a clash of egos. That's engagement. That's a piece that I've been seeing show up with one person in particular recently for me. And every time they come up, it's almost like this feeling of puffed chest, you know, pounding on it and rawr, you know, who's got the bigger plumage here, and which is just dumb because it's wasted energy. And I see it. And so now when I know I'm going to be in that situation with that person, I take some time beforehand to set an intention for the engagement to be a win-win-win. So I'm working to go into the situations more mindful and with a better intention for a positive outcome for all involved, instead of just my ego getting its way. And in those moments, I've started recognizing what's the physiological feeling when my ego wants to just come out and be like, oh yeah, bring it on. If I can feel that physiological reaction, it's this moment of, oh, I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
I'm about to tell somebody to go pound sand, even if it's really nice. And so then I get to, that's when it allows me the choice of engaging in that way, or stepping back and allowing that person to be who they are and where they're at. And I think that this for me right now is the dance, is if I'm not engaging with them and we still need to create an outcome from the dialogue, how do I do that? Now, in neurolinguistic programming, we call it the law of requisite variety.
Mm-hmm.
The most flexible person in a situation controls the situation.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, flexibility doesn't mean giving in. It's a little bit like the person who has learned how to have their boss or significant other or whatever believe that ideas are their ideas because they know that that's how they get them to move on them.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's giving me the place to practice what does flexibility in this instance to get the outcome desired. And the outcome desired isn't about me, it's about creating the best outcome for that particular
Yes.
event, however you want to look at it. I'm not going to say more about what that is just because the details need to be private. But it's ego. And so when you say, how do you shift it? Number one, always is awareness. For me, I'm kinesthetic, so feeling when that ego feeling starts to show up. And sometimes it shows up and comes out of my mouth without me even, it's like, whoa, okay, there went that.
Uh-oh, that happened.
Right? And learning to work with it, learning to recognize it, and learning to take a breath and ask myself, what's the outcome I want in this moment? How do I want to show up in this moment? Is there judgment and ego in this moment?
Yes, there's always judgment and ego.
No.
I love that. The other thing that I would like to add to that is, particularly for people who are like, oh wait, I just said that. Have an idea of how you would like to respond beforehand. So like if you've been in enough situations, whatever they may be, the next time my manager says this, I would like to respond with this. The next time my husband says this, I would like to respond with this. The next time my child throws a fit in the middle of the grocery store, I would like to respond with this.
Right.
That way you get to be in alignment with your values and with the way that you see yourself. I have sort of the opposite experience or I guess nature. Maybe it's not my nature because I'm a Sagittarius, but I have the opposite response. So when I don't know what to say, I don't say anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that out of the commitment to not shred people with my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Because my tongue is very sharp. My brain is very creative and quick. And so I learned, that is why I learned not to engage. If I don't say anything now, I can collect my thoughts and then I can come back with a response that I will be proud of.
Right.
I had, I think I told you about this, but I don't think I told you how it unfolded. So I had a couple of experiences with my manager where I did not feel as if I was necessarily being treated like an adult. And during my evaluation, I told her about these experiences. And she was mortified. Was like, what? I said what? Oh my God, I am so sorry. That is insane. I never should have said that. That is completely inappropriate and unprofessional. And I had not gone to any of those judgmental places. I just said, oh, she must be having a bad day. But if I had responded in the moment, my response would have probably, let's not say potentially, most likely escalated the situation instead of inspiring her to self-reflect and be more aware of her words in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because my immediate thoughts are always, excuse me, have you lost your mind? Are you insane?
Right. Listen, bitch. So,
right, I was going to say, or some not PG version.
Right. I'll just say that, not PG version. Well, and my observation of you and your practice of that may be a long-standing practice. However, one of the things that I've, in knowing you the length of time I have, and in watching you shift and transform some things for yourself, you also are so much more okay with who you are. And I think that, and sure of who you are. And I think that when we reach that point, it is easier to not engage in the moment in those kinds of things. Added to that, your commitment, yes, to not shred people with your words, is a powerful thing, is that intention, but also the self-knowingness. Because then when people do say things where you're like, well, that was kind of an asshat thing to say, you're not taking it personally. You're understanding, wow, that person must be having a bad day, or wow, that person has a crappy command of the English language, and or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And especially, like you said, in situations where, you know, you and your boss, when you engage, or your manager, or your significant other, or whatever it is for you people who are listening, it's like a jukebox. And you each have your song. And so you're like, yay, I'm going to engage with my coworker today. I'm going to press D53. And that record comes out and drops down, and that record is what plays. And so what I hear you saying is, decide to play a different song.
Mm-hmm.
When your kid's acting up in the store, play a different song. When your
if
manager,
you would like, if you don't
yes,
want to be the screaming mom in the grocery store.
Yeah, if you don't want to be the screaming mom in the grocery, if you're happy being the screaming mom, then keep being the screaming mom. Just know the rest of us are sitting in our egos with our judgy pants on, making comments about you in our heads.
On
or
my
to our
unicorn.
friends. Yeah, on my unicorn as I ride through and look down at you with my petty judgy self. But if there is a situation where you're like, I don't feel this communication is effective, I don't feel it's a healthy relationship, I want to shift that. We know that we can only shift ourselves, not the other person. So we get to change that song. We get to practice those things. And I'm going to say, give yourself a little grace as you're doing that.
For sure.
Because if you are the mom who's been the yeller, and you've decided, I'm no longer, it's no longer acceptable to me. I'm unavailable for being the yelling mom. Well, sometimes the habits are hard to break. Sometimes the reactions are hard to break, and take time to practice it. Or you may practice it and fumble the first few times. Oh my God, I tried to have a rational conversation with my nutso coworker, and which is a judgment, by the way. And I fumbled over my words, and I felt like an idiot. Great. You practiced. You practiced playing a different song from the jukebox. Give yourself a gold star sticker for that, and stay with it and keep working and setting those intentions of, I want it to be a peaceable outcome when we have conversations. Great. Set the intention with anticipation versus expectation. That part's going to be a different call. But I think that helps with the whole, am I engaging in ego? And when I'm not engaging in ego because I've set a different intention and I'm practicing that, that's where expansion can happen little by little. And sometimes those little pieces of expansion end up being the most profound ones. Agree?
Absolutely. I would like to add to this conversation the like knowing ahead of time what you're going to say. Some of us struggle with the word no. I know I do, especially when I love someone, and there is a self-awareness component, but there's also just the component of I want them to like me. So let me say yes. When I really need, it would be ideal for my energy, for my sanity, for my productivity, for me to say no. Having some various ways of saying that is super helpful. I would love to, but I don't have the bandwidth at the moment. I really can't fit that into my schedule right now. Just because for a lot of us with people pleaseritis, exercising no being a complete sentence has been a struggle for me. And then I over-explain, and it's a hot mess. And so I started practicing, like, I have a bubble bath in my calendar. So can you blah, blah, blah? Actually, I don't have any space in my calendar to fit that in. Doesn't matter that I've got a bubble bath in there. It's my time. And that has been really helpful for me in being able to like honor my desires and honor my time and say no in a way that doesn't make me feel like a terrible person.
Yes, because saying no doesn't make you a terrible person. One of the things, just from a languaging standpoint, and how certain things negate out what you've just said, one of the things I teach people is to convey, you know what, if I did that, I'd want to give it 100%. And right now, my time is allocated elsewhere. I wouldn't be able to, which isn't fair to you, me, or the project. It's a much longer way of saying it, but to say, I'd love to, but I don't have time right now. That but, I'd switch the but to and, because but just wipes out the whole I would love to part. And they won't hear it. All they will hear is, yeah, I don't have time for that. I would love to. That sounds like so much fun. And I know right now, I don't have the time to commit to it.
I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Because I would much rather have somebody tell me, you know what, I get that your project's important to you. And I'd want to give it 100% instead of half-ass it. And right now that doesn't work with what's currently on my calendar. You know, I might still get annoyed because everybody should want to do, you know, what works for me, because that's ego. But I'd much rather hear that than have somebody go, okay, and then flake out.
Right.
Or, oh, God, that sounds really great, but, okay, great. Give me your excuse. What, the neighbor borrowed the lawnmower? Because right now, anything that you say after that but, you know, one excuse is as good as another.
Yeah. So we're going to have to, like, write that down for people or rewind it and write it down for yourself, because it's just, from my experience, it's so much more ease and joy and glory when I know ahead of time what I am saying.
Yes. And there are some instances where you're just not going to know.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
it happened Saturday night. So, for those of you who don't know, me from Adam, my half side is Native, and we followed the Native American teachings on spirituality. And I was gifted with some medicine, and I keep it close to my heart, but it's always tucked in my shirt unless I happen to be wearing a tank top where it likes to flip out. But I keep it tucked in. It's not the kind of thing where it's like, oh yay, look at what I'm wearing, look at my sparkly dangly earrings,
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not something that I want people touching.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one friend, bless her heart, she always sees that I have it on, and she will pull it out so it's out where people can see it, and then she'll pat it. And I've tried to get her to stop. And we were at an event Saturday, and she had done that, and I figured once she walked away, I would tuck it back in. And I forgot because I just got doing everything else we were doing. And somebody's like, oh, what is that? And I'm like, oh, KT likes to pull that out. And I just stuck it back on my shirt. But then they're like, well, why don't you have it out? And without even thinking, all that came out of my mouth was, because it's nobody's business.
No.
And I was like, right, exactly. I was just like, oh my God, that was really harsh. And then, of course, I'm like, oh, that was a lot harsh. And it's interesting because the energy didn't feel like me. And I'm like, what the hell was that?
Mm-hmm.
And what my half side shared, he goes, that's the energy of the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, aha. So I could have prepared always till Sunday.
Yeah.
Of how to engage if that happened. And there will be, he did give me some pointers on if that happens again, here's how you could respond. So now I have something to practice with.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it doesn't come out that gracefully, if it does come up again, it gives me a place to practice and give myself a little grace. Okay, that was kind of we can soften some of these things. But sometimes the first time it comes around, it's not like you had anything to practice. And wow, that just came out, didn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or maybe even if it isn't the first time around, but if you have been biting your tongue a lot, that is typically when people get it from me. When I have been biting my tongue a lot and I haven't had an opportunity to sit them down when I feel all sparkly and light and spiritual and loving, and I haven't come to my more spiritual self and gotten an agreement with them about what is and is not okay for them to show up in my world. My first husband, oh bless him. So I was living with his mom for a little while, and not at all shy about my feelings about his parenting or lack thereof from my judgment. And she was not thrilled about hearing this about her son. And rather than telling me, she told everyone else. And he then came back to me and said, why did I not know you felt this way? Because what good's it going to do? It's not going to change. Telling you that you're a crappy father is not going to make you a better father. Not in my opinion, anyway. And then maybe a year and a half later, completely losing my mind and saying probably everything that I ever wanted to say to him about his parenting over the previous 11 years, shouted across his lawn. So I could have prepared and, had a nice, eloquent speech prepared, and it would not have come out that way. It would have come out with, I hope they all realize you're not crap. And some expletives and sitting on my unicorn.
I was gonna say, and I'm guessing there might have been a tiny bit of ego involved.
Oh, the whole ego.
Yeah, the whole ego, not even just a tiny bit. And that wasn't even little ego, that was big ego. So, and as it comes to expansion, when you're in that place and space, does it allow for expansion for yourself or the other person?
Oddly, that was a plate smashing moment. If that had not happened, funny enough, so I leave his house, I go to my house, he calls me. You like being abused? Why are you calling me? I drove away from you. What is wrong with you? So now I'm walking down my street shouting at him on the phone. And I hear God say to me, are you deaf? He is telling you that he is giving them all he has. Therefore, he believes that this is all he has. Why are you shouting at him? Oh, you have a point. And at the end of that conversation, my ex says to me, that was the most productive conversation I think we may have ever had. So I just didn't have the tools to do anything but shout at him. I didn't have another way to get 20 plus years of pent up frustration out at that moment in time. And so I gave my ego the steering wheel. I let her drive. We did not have a wreck. It looked like a train wreck. It sounded like a train wreck. Anybody that was in my neighborhood that day was probably like, ooh, she's upset. But in the end, it turned out to be great. But at some point, I had to surrender. I came to a new place of awareness. I had to stop insisting on my way. It did not change him, but I was changed.
Right.
And
so expansion did happen.
Yeah.
And without that little nudge of he's given everything he can, so in his mind, had that nudge not been there, you might have felt better in voicing, 10 years of pent up crap. But it may not have opened the doors for expansion.
Right.
But that aha is huge, right?
Yeah, this is an interesting pivot. So like sometimes letting your ego have their way is the way to expansion. Because for myself, I tend to be a very disciplined person with my emotions with other people, more for their protection than mine. And so if I don't find another outlet for that, if I don't find through journaling, or if I don't process and talk it out with Naomi or Lisa or Anita or someone or a therapist, if I don't have a conversation with one of my other healing friends, then flipping out on that person is going to be the way that I release all of the resistance. And then I'm finally able to hear what spirit has for me. And then I can go, oh, well, let me go be different. With this new awareness.
I think for some people that is absolutely true, because you have to shovel out the muck.
Yeah.
To have the space. For some people, are you shoveling out the muck? Or are you simply stirring it up?
Oh,
And I
yeah,
think
if that
that's
is
the
your
piece
normal
of
way
the
of
book.
being,
Yes.
if that's your ego's normal way of being, maybe not. Maybe not give them steering wheel.
Yes. Because then you're simply giving more power to the story, whatever the story is the ego is holding on to.
Exactly.
And yeah, so decide: I'm a shovel it out or I'm a stir it up when it comes to the muck. Because yes, I think such a brilliant illustration of that is one way where sometimes being in that ego moment, at the end of that, the light bulb turns on, and that's where the expansion happens.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't even have to be like with other people. I've had, when I was depressed, I've had some ego moments where I just couldn't life. Like I couldn't adult.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Right.
The dishes made me cry. And the only way out of that was through it. I had a belief that I was alone. And the only way out of that was through it, was to sit in the bed under the covers in complete darkness and sob and sob. And I felt like my soul was breaking and falling out because I'm a Sagittarius and we're dramatic. And, and at the end of it, with all of this clarity of actually, when this was after my mom died, actually, you're not alone. You're so supported that the universe sent someone who loves you and who you love from my church to my mom's hospital bedside, 75 minutes away in another city. She did not know that was my mother. I did not know she was there. So here I am telling myself the story about how I wasn't there and I should have been there. And the universe reminded me of, you are so not alone. We had that job covered for you. You are so not alone that we always regularly, frequently send you people to help you raise your kiddos. It doesn't look the way you think. It does not look like your mom or your ex-husband or any siblings that you don't have. But how delicious is it that it kind of looks like random strangers? They're not strangers, they're angels. They came for this. But it looks like people showing up and buying school supplies and buying shoes and, oh, I'll pick them up from school and bring them home for you, no problem. But if I didn't sit with that and like give myself over to the ego drama of I'm all alone, I might not have gotten to the clarity of actually I'm not. I'm good.
It's a beautiful dance, isn't it, with the ego?
Yes. Yes, yes, and so much expansion. So, what shall we leave the beautiful people with?
Make a decision is what comes up for me.
Ooh.
Make a decision if you're going to engage. Set that intention. Am I going to engage with my own ego or someone else's, really?
I like that so much.
That's where it starts, is make the decision. And then start noticing when ego's taking over. If you're like me and you're highly kinesthetic, notice the physiological reaction that starts happening when that ego wants to be like, I own the stage. No Leo-ness in me whatsoever. Or if you're Sagittarius and it's all drama, okay, great. Recognize when it's coming up so that you can decide, okay, am I going to have the same song play on the jukebox or am I going to pick a different song? So start setting yourself up to recognize when it's, and then ask yourself, of course, because yes, expansion can happen through ego or it can be blocked, and ask yourself, what is the lesson in this for me? What is this here to teach me? for my expansion.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that the first thing that you said, am I going to engage with my ego or someone else's? Along with that comes awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like once you make that decision, then you have so much more awareness than you have had before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been my experience that awareness is everything, because you can make a deliberate decision to shout at your ex-husband, but you can make a deliberate decision not to shout at your ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
But that awareness puts you in your place of power. And I think that is the most expansive place of all.
Exactly. Agreed.
I think we can leave it there for the people. And we will
I think so.
talk to you guys next week.
Have a great week, everybody.